I think a lot of the people that complain, I want to work in open source, but like I don't get paid for it. I think they're just not doing their job, which is get creative and find a business model that works. For a lot of projects, there is a aligned business model that still allows the product to genuinely be open source and have the benefits of being open source with something that's optional, that's commercial, which is exactly how SST works. Everything we do is open source. When you're in production, we have an entirely optional console, which helps you do tasks that as a team you might care about, right? Look at logs, see issues, keep track of deploys, like stuff like CI, like a bunch of things like that. You generally do not need it. Like it's not forced at all. It's just complementary. And enough people in our funnel, convert to that to let us to keep going, right? Keep the lights on and get paid. So that wasn't easy to discover that. We tried 3 different versions of the console before we found one that made sense. You have to not just execute on one product really well, you have to execute on 2 products really well. Like ST itself has to be good enough to grow. And the console has to be good enough to convert. It's not easy. It's again why I don't recommend doing dev tools or open source generally for most people. So there are, I think, a whole set of projects that could be that if you are committed and creative enough. There's a way to do that.
Have you seen
I think a lot
like
more projects
level?
go that way.
Have you seen like the level for dev tools, like the criteria and criticism level is like 10x higher? I think it is because it's like when you develop a tool, it's either really well or it's really good, or devs are like, I could just build this in like 5 minutes on my own. Why would I ever use your tool? Have you seen that
Yeah.
like sort of vibe?
Yeah, I think this is another, again, is why I don't recommend devs to go into this space. I think they go into it with kind of a naive sense. If you think about like the stereotypical dev, like what they're good at, what they're not good at. If you couldn't launch a B2C like consumer social app, you probably shouldn't do a dev tool because it's almost the exact same thing. You have to, it's effectively B2C, right? You're like capturing individual consumers. You gotta get them to the aha moment as fast as possible where it clicks for them that this is useful. And you have to get them to tell all their friends and coworkers about it. So it's
And it can't break.
Well, I mean, yeah, it shouldn't break. We've had things that, I mean, it's funny because like if we mess up, your database gets deleted. So like the stakes are pretty high.
Right.
But like, yeah, I mean, like stability is a big thing. So it's like this weird marriage of like really traditional engineering, like building tools for engineers, but also like almost all the aspects of like a B2C, like social media type app. The other founder that I really admire is Jared from Bun, because I feel like he's one of the few people in the space that has both. He comes from a background of building like viral apps, but still also has an engineering side to him. Both Frank and Jay previously worked on like very consumer focused applications in social media. So I don't think people would expect that getting into dev tools because it feels very engineering, but it has this other side of it too. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's say somebody does decide to work in developer tooling space. What would be your advice to getting started?
Yeah. The key thing here is understand that it's extremely easy to build something that is useful on day one and extremely difficult for people not to outgrow it. And if you look at like, it's funny, SC's been around long enough now where I look back at all the companies that were kind of like came out around the same time as us, and almost all of them are dead. Like almost all of them are dead. It doesn't feel good. Like it honestly feels like it doesn't feel good to be the last one left in a graveyard. It kind of feels like you're like in the wrong space. But what happens is it's very easy to get a lot of traction for something very simple, where anyone that could actually pay you big money graduates back to AWS or like, some other bad service, but meets the needs that a bigger company has. So really focus on, you just got to do both. You got to make something that's really simple on day one, but like has no ejection point. If it has an ejection point, there's no like big business here.
Yeah. And the best part too about working in open source is you can be petty with users. If they're like, bro, why is this bug not fixed? Fix it yourself, dude. Fire up Cursor, take your hand at it. Don't come to me about this. Go try to watch some epic web videos and figure out how to fix your hydration.
Yeah. So I don't know if you're going to believe this or not, but I've actually never done that. Which is
No
maybe surprising
way.
given my personality.
No.
Okay, so I'll explain why. Because I'm not an open source. Like my projects aren't just like hobby projects for myself that some annoying person shows up in. They're commercialized products. These are like my customers. And when a customer complains, like, I don't react that way because I have a way to get paid through all this. So it's like a different kind of relationship. The only time I can remember where like I was annoyed and I had like an aggressive response, and I knew this was going to happen. When I released OpenAuth, there's just a bunch of people that are like out there just looking at like any opportunity to sound smart. And so they came in and opened all these issues like this isn't secure, like JWTs aren't secure because of blah, blah, blah. It's just like they don't consider any practical trade-offs or anything. They just have some bullet point where they're like, this isn't secure, just to sound smart.
If someone had root access to my system, then this whole thing would be insecure. Yeah,
exactly. It's like if they do an XSS attack, they can access the access token here. If they do an XSS attack, they can call any of your API endpoints. It doesn't matter whether they grab the access token or not. It's just like they don't consider that. And I knew that was going to happen. I knew the type of person that does that. I was very annoyed, and I literally was like, no, like this is what you're doing. I'm not here for like drive-by comments like this that like create a bunch of like fear for people. And I like wrote up a code of conduct being like, if you're gonna create a security issue, like you need to explain it in this way, explain the trade-offs, the plus sides, the downsides of the security issue. Also, obviously disclose it to us privately first if it's a real one. So I wrote that in the code of conduct. Next day, I wake up. Some random code of conduct police guy is like, this is not really what code of conduct is for. And like, I'm like, who are you? Like, are you going to be someone that's involved with this project at all? Or are you just like looking for?
He's a Reddit mod who's surfing the interwebs.
Yeah, like he sent the PR filling with like very generic, like you need to be a good person, like type of code of conduct things. I'm just like, okay. Anyway, I get annoyed with open source, but not in the traditional way, I think.
Yeah, but I think recently too, with Cursor and all these AI tools now, and with the open source, because I mean, like you'll get some indie dev who's like, I know how to code, when he's really just vibe coding in Cursor and doesn't even know what a npm package is or test is, for God's sake. They cloned the repo and like kind of asked Cursor to talk them through it to kind of implement change, and like you get this vibe coded mess. I've seen like for example, Zero.email, they're open source and they're doing a lot of stuff. I was talking to Nizzy the other day, and he says like he'll get a couple PRs a week that are just absolutely vibe coded slop, where it's like you can literally like see like the Cursor prompts because it's like stored in the Cursor rules or whatever, and it's like add this massive feature that would take like a whole team to like a week to implement, and it just tries to one shot it. Do you think that like the AI junkification is kind of ruining the open source and making it harder because like there's 10x more PRs for the maintainers to kind of review? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, and I kind of categorize projects differently. Like there's projects that are open source for fun, and there's projects that are strategically open source. So if you look at a lot of the ST projects, the reason they're open source, well, one, they have to be because they're libraries and like it doesn't make sense otherwise, but there's like a secondary thing. I think I mentioned this last week. Open source is great when there is a very well scoped core that is attached to a long tail of problems, right? If you take something like OpenAuth, there's a core that is like, is like very compact, but there's like a long tail of different providers, like sign in with Google, sign in with Apple, sign in with whatever.
Sign in with Lego.
Sign in with Lego. I'm pretty sure we have that in there now. It's really, open source is great for that because I'm not going to go like figure out Lego sign in. It's better for the person that's actually trying to use it to like write that adapter. So that's the benefit of open source. Like SST works that way itself. Like we cover like the core things that we use, but if you're like a Python user or if you're like a Rust user, it's not something that we use day to day. So it's better for them to like handle those like components. But the core is not something that we like no one even tries to contribute to the core. I think sometimes we do get contributions, but like it's very clear that we're just working on it and we're pretty much ignoring all feedback about that because our structure is we build the core, but to cover the long tail, we need the community's help. So those are the types of projects that I tend to put in open source. They don't really attract this kind of problem. I can see how if you're building just like an end user web app and you happen to make it open source, mostly because it's fun, you're going to get people like just adding random features here and there. And that's kind of, even outside the vibe coding thing, like the feature might not be a good idea, or like you might not even want to implement it in a certain way, right? So those drive-by PRs are like pretty useless even before vibe coding.
Right.
Yeah.